Good morning, Mary, and welcome to the show. So good to have you here. Let's just go ahead and get started. So, Mary,
Hey,
why don't you give the audience an introduction for us?
thanks, Jason. It's great to talk to you today. So I am Mary Moss. I'm the Director of Operations at ACE Innovative Networks, which is a small tech company here in New York City. I run the day-to-day operations of the company and also do a lot of networking and work on business development. I'm also finishing up my degree in political science at Baruch College. So in the evenings, I go to class and read political science books and philosophy.
Interesting. I didn't know that about you on the college degree, so that's super cool. And obviously, as I've talked about here on the show before, I am a recovering tech person as well. I'm actually not recovering. I still love technology. So like we get along great. And as a tradition on the show, I like to tell everybody how we met. So Mary and I are on the leadership team of a really amazing networking group called Master Networks. That when we meet once a week in Midtown Manhattan, and that's how Mary and I originally knew each other. I joined the group. I want to say almost 3 months ago now, and I believe Mary, you joined. I want to say maybe like 6 weeks to 8 weeks ago, something like that.
About 6 weeks, I think.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah.
So Mary and I have gotten to know each other a bit through that, and we'll continue to be in that group together and support each other and all the great members we're going to have joining. So as we do, as another tradition on the show, is I like to have us talk about our first impressions of each other. And you and I have not talked about this with each other. So maybe there'll be some surprises, maybe there won't, but we'll definitely learn something about each other. So because it's my show, I'm going to have you go. I'm going to have you go first.
It's very
What was your
generous
first
of you.
impression of me, Mary? Oh, yes. Yes. I get to have a little bit of control here.
My very first impression was that I could tell that you are a really fun person and that you would be easy to talk to. So yeah, we met at the Master Networks group, and we were lucky enough to do the bond session on the first day.
Yeah.
So basically, it's just a short kind of guided conversation where we get to talk a little bit about our personal things and professional things and try to find some common ground. And that was really comfortable, and we quickly found the common ground on our tech background, and
Yeah.
that you had been in tech on the mobile side of things and some telecom stuff, and so it was really cool to know that we had a similar vocabulary. And actually, if you remember that first day when that was another thing that stuck out, is that you like to find common vocabulary, and if you
Yeah.
didn't understand something that somebody said, you'd ask them to clarify. And
Oh yeah, that's right. I know who you're referring to. I'm like, can we pause? I think it was about insurance. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about right now.
right,
And it wasn't you because I pretty much know all the pretty much know all the acronyms you would put out, most of them anyway.
yeah.
So very cool. Well, thanks, Mary. That's interesting to know, and I think I'm pretty fun, so I'm glad that came off that way. So let me share what I thought about you when I first met you. My
Ooh,
first impression of you, yeah, was that you were like a quiet confidence, and it's not a shyness. It's more like you strike me as somebody that likes to sit back and like really absorb the room and figure out how you're going to interact with people. And then, like shortly thereafter, we did get to the bond, and you're actually, and not actually, like I thought this about you, but when we got talking, you're very friendly, very easy to talk to as well, and very intentional about how you communicate to actually build a connection. It felt like you were very intentional how to build a connection with me, so I appreciated that. So, like very quickly, I think we realized, hey, this is a fun, easygoing, fun person to talk to that we have some tech stuff in common with. But more importantly, we're just both good people who like to have fun and talk to each other, which is at the end of the day more important than talking about VoIP and PBXs and all that stuff.
right.
Which I don't want to bore the audience too much with the acronyms, so we'll probably not spend a lot of time on that today. With that, let's kick it off. So, first question I have for you is, and maybe this goes to the acronym, maybe not, I don't know. We'll find out. What is something that you nerd out about, Mary?
So I actually, in my non-work life, I think I tend to nerd out about things a lot more. And so lately, something that I've been nerding out about is F1 racing. And over the last year or so, I've really become a fan of F1 racing. I've watched the races. I watched the qualifying races when they, race to figure out who's going to get to line up first in line on the real race, which is fun. And I started following all the drivers on social media, and they all have their own personalities and really open up on social media, and you get an idea of how friendly. Yeah, I mean, there's some friendly rivalries, and some real rivalries, but overall, they're very friendly people, kind of off the track. And so I've spent probably hours just learning about the drivers and the cars and the teams and what they do and how they get to where they are. So that's what I've been nerding out about.
So this is so fascinating because on the show last week, I had my friend Tyler, he's not an F1 racer, but he is a NASCAR racer. He's not in the NASCAR circuit, but he races short track, like all these terms that I don't know. I'm not a racing fan at all. He would be the person that he would understand all, but his thing that he nerds out about is racing as well, which is super cool because it's not that common. It wasn't specifically F1, but I guarantee you he would know. He was talking about, what was it? Cars with spoilers, cars without spoilers, driving into turns and the different, like we talked about, the fastest he's gone on a straightaway, the fastest he's gone into a turn. And I was like, this all sounds super cool. I don't know anything about it. And I know nothing about F1 other than I know, I think Michael and Mario Andretti. And that.
No, that's NASCAR. That's when they just drive around the circles.
Wait, Mario and Michael Andretti are NASCAR drivers? I thought they were Formula One drivers.
I don't think so.
The thing that I know about Formula One is that when I do see it on TV every now and again, it looks super cool because they're always driving through these amazing, like French towns, or it looks like the Swiss Alps or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the Formula One. Like it's not generally on a track. It's more like they're driving through actual streets, right?
No, most of them are on tracks. The one that they don't have on a track is in Monaco every year.
Oh,
so that's
the Monaco
like the
GP.
big one where they drive through the streets of Monaco. But otherwise, they have tracks set up around the world, and they're always interesting shapes and have turns and almost right angles and more than right angles, and so there's a lot of, depending on the track, it can be a really exciting race.
Yeah, that's cool. I can't promise you that I'll check it out because I have enough sports that I follow. But you're the second person that's talked about racing on here as something they nerd out about. So that's super cool. That's great. So moving along, what's something that's inside of your comfort zone that might be outside of somebody else's comfort zone?
In my comfort zone is action. And especially action under pressure. So, and I think this comes from working in a tech company. There's obviously a lot of pressure, and when services are down or there's some kind of outage, things can get very heated very quickly because you have the pressure from a client who, their business is down. They can't do what they need to do. And so you have pressure from other people. You have to handle how to treat, the people who can actually fix the problem, whether it's something that's here that I can fix, whether it's something that my engineer can fix, and then you have people who are trying to bug the engineer about when they're going to fix it, and you have to just kind of like juggle all these priorities. And so I'm very comfortable doing that. And so when things happen that create just kind of hectic things, I'm usually the cool one under pressure. Now, something that I struggle with that's kind of outside of my comfort zone is action. Well, I wouldn't say action outside of pressure, but actually coming up with action lists outside of pressure. So like strategizing what I should be doing at another time when it's not just like a very split-second decision. Especially on my own, when I can brainstorm with other people, it's a lot easier for me. But that's something that I work on every day, is the more of planning things about what to do when it's not a high pressure situation, which is probably in a lot of other people's comfort zones.
Yeah. 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 No, I have a couple follow-up questions. That's really interesting.
Hmm.
Starting with the thing that's outside your comfort zone, do you ever find that you create artificial deadlines for yourself or get yourself into situations to be in action because there actually is a deadline that you've created for yourself, or that you've maybe even procrastinated? I think it's a common thing for people
Yeah.
that procrastinate, where you like, oh yeah, like I got a week to do this thing, and then you wait till the last day because then you're actually in your comfort zone of I need to be in action in an urgent situation. Does that ever come
Exactly.
up for you, or do you ever operate that way?
That's usually my default operating zone, and something
Gotcha.
that I've been trying to do better, and I've seen you posting about this on LinkedIn and other places,
Uh
is the
huh.
time blocking, and
Yeah.
really just trying to calendar out the time to sit and do those things and create those artificial deadlines for myself. That,
Yeah.
like, today between 2 and 3:30, I am going to work on something that I'm going to execute tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we could talk about that offline if you'd like to talk more about those. That's one of the things I
Yeah.
work on with my clients. So back to your thing that's in your comfort zone. What do you attribute your ability to be like calm and cool under pressure, especially when, so because like you know, I used to work in similar jobs to you, not in operations specifically, but customer facing, and like systems are down. It's like the end of the world for them. So you've got the
Yeah.
client on one side who's generally in panic mode. And then my guess is on your side, you may have an internal person, like a salesperson or somebody internally that's also in panic mode.
Hmm.
How do you stay calm and cool? And just to be, because we like to get vulnerable on the show, are you actually calm and cool on the inside, and and that's coming out, or are you pretending to be calm and cool but you're actually freaking out on the inside as well?
So I'll answer that in take different parts of your question. So how did I learn how to do that? So I've been working in tech for 16 years, and when I first started, I was the frontline person. So I was taking the inbound tech support calls. I was the person that you would call and I would ask you, did you try turning it off and back on again? That type of thing.
Is
So
it plugged in? Is it plugged in?
is it are you sure your cat didn't unplug it? Which happens.
Yes, it does.
Yes. So, and it was not, and I was not naturally cool under pressure. That was
Hmm.
extremely stressful when something would happen, and I just had an endless stream of people, um, calling in very unhappy that things weren't working or something. But it was over time. I just learned how to kind of compartmentalize it and realize
Hmm.
that my clients were better helped and better served if I could stay calm, cool, give them the information, tell them up front if I didn't know, tell them up front if it was going to be longer than they wanted to hear.
Hmm.
Um, it's really about managing expectations. And it took me a long time to realize that somebody would rather hear that they're going to be out of commission for, let's say, 2 hours, versus telling them it'll be soon, it'll be soon, it'll be soon without anything. Because
Hmm.
if I tell them that something's not going to be working for 2 hours, they can maybe take their laptop and go to a coffee shop. They can, do something else. They can make plans to work around that. Where if you just tell them that it's going to be something soon, they just sit there and twiddle their thumbs, and then they're just, having to play catch up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so that's kind of how I learned how to be more comfortable with that.
Hmm.
And I would say that you know during the time, if there's some kind of minor or major crisis, I am cool even on the inside. I I think it's just kind of this feeling that comes over me where I'm just able to kind of set everything aside and just do what needs to be done.
Hmm.
Um, Afterwards, there's kind of I get the adrenaline rush
Yeah,
where
totally.
I can sit back and say, "Wow, that was intense," or that was exciting. And but during the time, I'm very I think I am calm inside too.
Yeah. Is there Is there any situation in your work life where you actually don't feel calm? Is there any customer situation specifically where it does rile you up and you get into the frenetic mode?
I think I would be hard pressed to think of a time that's the case. Maybe when it's completely out of my hands, when there's maybe a third party that's responsible for it and there's absolutely nothing that I can do, that tends to get me frazzled because I just feel kind of helpless, and I can empathize very much with a client because there's nothing they can do, there's nothing I can do. It's much easier to handle things that I am responsible for, or somebody that's in my office is responsible for fixing, and that I'm confident that they'll do it. When it's somebody outside, that is kind of frazzling sometimes.
Yeah, and that can be the case in telecom sometimes, right? You have to rely on third-party providers for certain services.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I've been there. You're making me not miss my old career.
Am I making your palms sweat a little bit?
No, I'm generally pretty calm, cool, and collected as well. The challenge that I have is I was on the sales side or sales engineering side. So, you've got the customer stuff, but then you also have the sales reps that a lot of times have deals on the line, or like reasons that they need this working now, and they don't really understand the technology of it, nor do they care. And rightly so, right? They're just trying to deliver a service to their customers and get paid. So, yeah, I'm definitely thinking about my past life and how this is something that I dealt with as well. And probably not as cool as you. Like, I'm sure I got fired up sometimes and easily annoyed or frazzled about it. But yeah, at the end of the day, you really do figure out through experience. And I spent almost 20 years in a similar space that at some point, it all works out and the customers forget about it and life goes on. So it's just not that big a deal. It just feels like a big deal in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So Mary gets to give a speech to the world. And it's 5 minutes.
I do.
What are you going to give your speech on, and why?
So I would give a speech on, I want to tell the world and everybody in the world that there's a choice about your actions.
I like that.
And that we aren't tied to a preordained human nature that requires us to act a certain way or believe certain things. And that every day we're allowed to wake up and be whoever we want to be in attitude and to some extent action. I know that there's this is a lot easier to say than it is to do. We all have responsibilities in our life and like certain things in that the way we live, that we can't always do everything we like 100% what we would want to do. But if we can't act in a certain way, we can always have an attitude about the way we're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that this probably comes from my my political science studies. There, a lot of the early modern political theory surrounds kind of this people who are in a state of nature, and then versus when you come together in a society and decide what that's going to look like. And I've decided that I don't think that there's an unbreakable human nature that we can't act differently from.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a concept that I've learned about through my coaching studies as well. It's called being at cause versus being at effect. So yes, of course, we're at effect of like the subway schedule and the weather and the things that we don't have any control over. But what you always have control over is, like you said, your attitude and being at cause for creating what you want versus being at effect of, the customer's mad at me, so therefore I'm going to get all upset and that's going to ruin my day. Like, yeah, you can choose that, or you can choose an empowering place of being at cause. So I think that's a super cool message that the world needs to hear, because there's so much victimhood in the world. Even people would say are really successful. It's always like somebody else's fault. It's the politics. It's the It's
Right.
X, Y, and Z, customers, it's working in sales. And I've been really guilty of this. It's like, oh, the product isn't good. It keeps failing. Nobody's going to buy it. Oh, my boss stinks. Like all these things that you don't really have control over.
Hmm.
And then like choosing like, what do I have control over? Which is like you said, your attitude, your work ethic, showing up, and then creating from that place. I mean, generally, if you do that, you'll have success regardless of all the other things around you.
Yeah.
I think that's a really cool speech topic.
Even
Thanks for
people in
sharing that.
positions of power, I think, have this same feeling, like whether they run a multi-million-dollar company, billion-dollar company, whether they're, members of Congress, they have kind of this attitude like, oh, that's politics. That's just what I have to do. Or, oh, that's business. I have to be super competitive. I have to, build my profits quarter after quarter, which actually I'm very surprised and happy to see that there's some executives and there's been some conversation around maybe that's not a sustainable way to continue operating these days. So
Yeah, there's a video I posted on LinkedIn last week about trends in 2020 for businesses, and one of the trends is becoming more purpose driven.
mm-hmm.
And like, what is your company actually creating and putting out into the world? And yes, there's
Right.
always going to be the shareholders, there's always going to be the employees, and people like make money, and that's all great. And then like, what is there besides that? And then how does that change how you operate as a company and how you operate as a CEO? And then how do you operate as an employee inside that company? So I think I'm hoping that we see more of that. I think it's going to be a long haul. And as long as there's money and greed involved, which human beings, I think that's a forever human condition. It's not going to be perfect, but it is definitely something. And by the way, Mary, I can tell you're in lovely Manhattan today. I can hear the siren behind you.
I am.
Great.
Our office is right down by City Hall, so it's just constant. Yeah.
I am not surprised. And I like it. It's authentic. You're in New York City, and it sounds like you're in New York City, which is awesome. I love it.
Right.
Well, good. So this is the part of the show where I'd love if you would just share with the audience your journey. Like, we're here today on the podcast. Tell us more about yourself. Like, where you came from, what led you to, this kind of work you're doing. And then also I'm interested personally, I think the audience would be as well, about your political science background, or what you're working on there, and where you see that taking you. Cause that's actually new information for me as well.
Yeah.
So this is your time to share whatever you'd like.
Great. Yeah. I grew up in New Hampshire. I went to high school there and spent most of my early life there. So I have kind of this, I adopted kind of the New England self-sufficient kind of attitude that a lot of people know about and think of New Englanders as. And I moved here to New York City in 2001, and it was kind of it was a huge adjustment. And to be honest, I really didn't like it here in the city for the first few years.
Mary? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I was just gonna ask, what drew you to moving to New York City, and when in 2001 did you move here?
I moved here permanently, I think around November of 2001.
Oh man.
So
Yeah.
I had lived here earlier in the spring, and what had drawn me here is I met the man who later became my husband. And at first it was a huge adjustment, and I didn't like it, and I decided that I didn't want to live in New York. And then after 9/11, it was a wake up call, and my husband really didn't want to leave the city. And so I decided that life is too short to, not live with somebody that you care about. And so I decided that I was going to move back and give it another shot. So that's why I moved back in around November. And it was still an adjustment. And I spent a lot of time just trying to, I think, feel like I lived in New Hampshire, but just in the city. And it wasn't until maybe, I would say around 2008 that I really had kind of a shift. I felt a real shift in attitude where I embraced the city and really started to visit the museums and go to the opera and go to the ballet and just really find a place for myself in the city and feel better about living here.
Hmm.
And I think that's just part of getting older and being more mature and being able to do that. But I think it was really important for me, and now I can't imagine really living anywhere else.
So
Um,
you fall in love with New York City now.
I did, yeah, I love it
Nice.
here.
That's great. Me too.
Yeah, there's nowhere else you can go that where you feel connected to so many people, and just the variety. I mean, just the diversity of people that live here, and that we all get along, and we're all New Yorkers, and we just, you ride the subway and something happens, there's a delay, and just you can make eye contact with anybody on that subway and just share a glance, and it's just, that moment, and you're just in it together. And
Yeah.
I think that's
Oh
a
yeah,
really special
exactly.
thing. Yeah. So in between that time, I started working in tech in 2003. And then again, I started doing an entry level tech support, and then just over the years took on more responsibility, did more of project management and customer onboarding. And so I've been with the same company since 2003.
That's
And
amazing. That's
yeah,
rare.
it is
And it's a
rare.
small company on top of that.
And a
That's
small
almost,
company.
yeah, that's really
I've
amazing.
been really fortunate to within a small company be given opportunities to grow and be constantly kind of redefining and adjusting my role to best suit whatever's going on within the organization at the time, so that
Hmm.
things stay exciting and that I'm never bored. I'm never I don't feel stagnant. It's always something different, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's a super, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to dive in on that a little bit, because I think
sure.
that's something that a lot of people look for, and something that you hear a lot, either as a coach or just friends, even here in the podcast, is people just get bored easily.
Hmm.
When you went to ACE in 2003, were you thinking this way, or were you thinking this way of like, oh, this is a place that I can land and I can learn and I can grow? Was that on your purview, or at that point was it just more of I need a job and this place looks good and they'll pay me what I
No,
like?
yeah, I just needed a job, and it was a tech support job. I knew how to use a computer. I knew I could come here and, to troubleshoot the type of issues that were there. I had done some customer service type of things in the past, so I knew I could be nice to people, which is an important thing to have to be nice to
Well,
people.
yeah, and some customer service people are not nice, so
Yeah,
that is a good skill that you bring.
right. I never imagined. I mean, I was in my early 20s, so it was not picturing that this would be a forever position. And
Hmm.
again, I'm just really fortunate to have found this place.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah.
So what about so today you mentioned this earlier, so you're the operations manager. What all
Hmm.
does that entail?
So that entails doing well, a very large mix of things. I do everything from working with vendors, so like the third party type of people that we procure wholesale services from. So managing that portion of it and making sure that we're getting the best quality service, that we're paying what we should be paying for that service, and that they're treating us the way that we should be treated. And then on the other side of it is the client management side. I still do a lot of customer kind of account management and talking to clients and making sure that we're providing them with the services that they need, that it's still
Hmm.
relevant to them. Um, and then also to manage our technicians and engineers and make sure that they're uh, working on projects that are going to be enhancing our services
Mm-hmm.
and bringing the type of maybe like features and service levels that our clients need. And also, then there's a component about my technicians who actually go out to clients to maybe fix problems or install services and things like that. So that I'm kind of doing a high level management of scheduling, making sure that things are getting done and that what they're supposed to go out and do is being completed and that everybody's on the same page about what's going on.
Yeah, so you really are like the kind of the one. It sounds like you are the one throat to choke for the client if something's
Yeah,
not going
exactly.
well. Like you're getting the
Yeah.
call or the email, and no wonder you have to stay calm and cool because I'm sure like working in that space, there's a million things that can go wrong. And
Hmm.
there, but and obviously, like I'm sure you guys have amazing service delivery as well. But there are things, as you said, that are just out of your control. That's
Yeah,
cool. That's cool.
occasionally. Yep.
Yeah, it's cool. So, would you be willing to talk a little bit about your passion for political science and what you're up to there?
Sure. So I started going to Baruch actually before I started working here, and then I took a little bit of a break, and then started going back. I think around 2009, and just taking one or two classes a semester. Sometimes having to skip a semester just because of things that were going on in life, but always striving towards the goal of finishing up my degree. Um, I love learning about why things are the way they are. So I think that's been a driving force in staying with political science. A lot of people are surprised that that's what I'm studying because they're like, oh, it's not you're not doing like computer science and technology stuff. And
Yeah.
so I just I love the philosophy behind why things are the way they are.
Hmm.
And so I have after this semester I have just one class left, so I should be finished up by the end of May next
Oh,
year
nice.
at the
Congratulations.
latest. Yeah, thank you. And right now I'm kind of deciding what that means. But what I would ultimately like to do is have some influence on the just kind of like the intersection between technology and government. I believe that there needs to be a lot more public policy surrounding our privacy online, similar to what the EU has for their privacy laws
Hmm. Yeah. You're
with
referring
the
to
GDPR.
right. Yep.
Yeah, and that type of thing. And I think it's I think it's shameful that we don't have that to even minimal extent. And I think that's really important. And I think that's probably going to be one of the more important things in the next 5 to 10 years,
Yeah. So this is
especially
like,
as
yeah.
there's leaps of technology coming up with AI, which is artificial intelligence, and facial recognition, and um, I mean, if you look to what's going on in China right now, it can come here very very quickly. So,
Hmm.
for example, in China, they're making it so that anybody who gets a cell phone needs to register their face, and it goes into a database, and they're basically just trying to do real time facial recognition on all their citizens on like public streets and things like that. So, which I think is very scary. I mean, and I don't
Yeah.
think that we should try to do the same thing.
Yeah. It's like the Minority Report thing is actually starting to be a reality.
Yeah.
Like predictive, yeah, like crime prediction and being able to see somebody in real time. I think Minority Report is retinal scanning, but yes, very similar.
Hmm.
Interesting. So yeah, so it sounds like you don't exactly know what you're going to do with the degree, but that's okay. You're gonna have the knowledge, and it's going to be a wrap up of a long journey for you, and
Right.
get to see where it takes you next.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see you running for office someday. Who knows?
Who knows? Maybe.
That would be very cool. You got my vote.
Thanks. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah. So kind of on that note, what is something that, or what are you passionate about? And you've talked a lot about the things you're in Formula One racing, passionate about staying calm and cool under pressure, which I think is a
Yeah.
good thing. And what your job, you're obviously very passionate about your job. You're passionate about New York City. Like, what else is it that you're passionate about that you'd want the audience to know?
I am passionate about helping people. In my job, one of my favorite things to do is to help clients use technology. I really live for these aha moments where somebody is able to do something better in their job, uh, something that makes their life easier, that allows them to do something that's going to be a real change for the success of their business. That's probably the most rewarding part of my job and what I love the most. Um, Outside of work, I volunteer with New York Cares, which is a great project. If you don't know about it, it's a volunteer organization that basically just coordinates volunteers for short-term projects. They do some longer-term projects, but the core of their philosophy is around just one-off volunteer opportunities so that people who have, I mean, we all have schedules that change day to day and week to week.
Yeah.
So with New York Cares, I can go on their website. I can say, I'm free Tuesday evening. What can I do?
Oh, that's cool.
And it'll just show me all these opportunities around the city where I can just sign up for something that goes from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. and that's it. That's the entire volunteer session for that thing. And I don't need to know anything beforehand. I can just show up, do what I need to do, and then volunteer again the next time.
Yeah. I
I'll
love
I'll
that.
also be volunteering with one of their longer term programs in the spring that has to do with tax prep for low income New Yorkers. So I'm looking forward to that too.
And
But
what,
I just
yeah.
go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
no, you go ahead. Sorry.
I just love helping, looking for opportunities to help. When I'm on the subway, I often kind of look out for those confused tourists that look like they are not sure where they're going, and just ask, ask them if they need help or if they know what stop they're trying to do, and make sure they're on the right platform and facing the right direction. It's just little things like that just cheer up my day. So I
Yeah.
like finding them.
Yeah, you're the ambassador for that tourist who's like, I heard New Yorkers were really mean, but then they were actually really nice,
Exactly.
which is actually I believe to be true as well. It's like
Hmm.
I don't. You're inspiring me to be a better person. I don't go out
Oh,
searching for it, but if somebody does ask me, I'm always super friendly about it.
yeah.
That's the Minnesotan in me. I want to uh, put in the show notes the organization that you mentioned around the volunteer. I think that's really cool because I do some volunteer work too, specifically with Habitat for Humanity. Like I love building
Hmm.
things and have some skills there, so I love doing that. But that's more like scheduled out a couple weeks in advance. It's a whole day of time, so you really need to take off work. I like that idea, and actually want to talk to you about this after this episode as well. Of
Sure.
you're just like, hey, like so you say like, hey, Tuesday I'm available from 7 to 9, and then there'll be a list of things that you just show up at the office and do the work.
Yeah.
I've
Yep.
never heard of that. That's really cool. And then on the tax prep, are you actually doing do you also do accounting work there, or what do you do inside of that volunteer organization?
So that in January, I'm going to a half day, or it's a few hours. It's just a learning course so that I'll be able to register on the IRS website. I guess they offer a test you can take, and then you're a certified tax prep helper. So it doesn't require you to have any accounting background. It's basically going to give you an idea of um, who the IRS is, like what they're looking for. It teaches you how to use some specific tax prep software, and
Okay,
then
gotcha.
register with the IRS that you kind of know what you're doing in that respect.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then once I do that, then it's on Saturday, on the weekends, they have these tax prep centers around the city. So I'll be able to go to those centers, and people will be able to come in and do their um, I think that usually it's more very basic tax returns like the
Hmm.
1040s and things like that.
Sure.
And I'll use some software to just input all the information about their incomes and anything else that needs to go in there. And then a real accountant kind of reviews all the tax returns afterwards and make sure that they were all done correctly.
Sure. Well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm inspired by the work you do. I
Thank
don't feel
you.
like I do enough volunteer work. So kudos to you for putting yourself out there and doing all that work and giving back to the world and helping people, like you said.
Thanks.
So, Mary, what's the thing that you're most proud of?
So I think a few years ago, actually, I kind of I thought about this a lot, um,
Hmm.
it was hard for me to come up with one thing that I'm kind of proud of. But a few years ago, as a wedding gift to a friend of mine, I photographed their wedding, and that's something that I was really proud of. That I was really nervous about it. They asked me to do it, and my first thought was, no, I'm not good enough. Um, so I do some amateur photography, just like as a hobby, on the weekends and stuff. Usually like family stuff, and I'll go out to like the mermaid parade. I've done a couple of years. Just
Hmm.
I like taking pictures of just kind of like casual portraits of people doing things and just
Yeah.
capturing them while they're doing it. So they asked me if I would do that for them as a wedding present. I did,
Oh, wow.
and
That's awesome.
so I'm just really proud of how I kind of planned out what I was going to do for the day and before the ceremony, during the after party and stuff. And that's just was something that I was really proud of to be able to put together like this whole album of pictures. And they were thrilled with how they came out. And my friend said to me after I gave them to him, he said, this is exactly how I wanted to remember my wedding."
Yeah.
So,
Do you were you nervous going into the event?
oh, terrified. Yeah,
Yeah, I can
yeah, I was
honestly, yeah, I can
really nervous.
imagine. I can imagine.
I mean, there's so many things that could go wrong. Like, what if I forget to put a card in my camera? What if what if the card breaks? What if I miss this? What if I miss that? And it all worked out, and it was a great experience.
That's super cool. You know, there's something that you just said, like the whole I forget to put the card in. I had a moment when I was recording a podcast episode last week where I'm like, am I recording right now? And I was, thank God. Can you
Oh,
imagine?
good.
Like, yeah, imagine like shooting a wedding or like you're like, hey, thanks for the time today, Mary. And then you're like, oh, we weren't recording,
Yeah,
which I'm sure has happened to people, but that's super cool. What a cool gift to be able to give your friends as well.
yeah.
It's so much
And
more.
I think the reason that I'm proud of it is because things like that make it easier to say yes to things.
Hmm.
I know like, for example, when you asked me to do this podcast, um, my first instinct was to say no, because,
Hmm.
um, like you said in your first impression of me, I'm kind of the quiet person that likes to just kind of take in the room and see
Hmm.
what's going on, and not necessarily talk a lot about myself and things. But if you remember, I told you that I said yes because the only reason I could think of to say no was that I was scared of doing it.
Hmm.
So
That's
doing
awesome.
things like photographing my friend's wedding and having it all turn out okay helped me say yes to scary things.
Well, I'm glad you said yes, and I'm glad you're here. And I'm hoping
I am too.
it's not that, and I'm hoping has not been so scary for you.
It's turned out not to be so scary.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. So we're getting near the end of the time. I've got a few more questions for you if you have the time as
Sure,
well.
I do.
Awesome. I just want to check in to make sure you don't have any clients that are burning down your door right now. But
No, I time blocked. I time blocked for you.
look at you. Oh, look at you, Mary. Amazing. And there's no super urgency on this podcast. So look at you. You're
Right.
having a time management breakthrough. I love it. Um, so this question takes a little bit of a different spin. And this question is, what is something that you're afraid might actually be true about you?
That I might not be able to cook. That I might just not be able to cook at all.
Have you,
So
do you cook?
I so I can cook scrambled eggs. Um, and everything else is pretty much a crapshoot.
Well,
But I've been trying to practice.
so I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to challenge you on this one.
Oh, great.
Because you're afraid that might actually be true about you, but it seems like you already know that that's true about you. Or have you been told that you don't know how to cook?
No, I haven't been told I don't know how to cook.
Ah, okay.
But I have cooked a couple things and they turned out edible. And they were all right. So,
and the people who ate them are still alive, so that's
they're
good.
still alive. Yep.
That's good. That's good. I'm going to challenge you on this one to dig a little bit deeper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. What's something that you're afraid that might actually be true about you?
Do you want to pause the recording?
Okay.
So I think something I'm afraid that might not actually be true about me is that that I'm not an expert. So I get told very often that, wow, you know a lot about that, and oh, you're an expert. You must be a technology whiz, a technology expert, and things like that. And when it comes down to it, I sometimes worry that I'm not. I guess that I'm not smart enough. Because I think I am pretty smart. I can learn things, but that I'm not going to be an established, like I would really like to be considered an expert in something. And so I think that drives me all the time to be learning new things. I love going to technology conventions. Like last week, I was at this technology day for a nonprofit called TechCon that was talking about the challenges that face nonprofits in implementing technology and doing digital transformations.
Oh, cool.
And I love doing that. And I think I learn a lot. And I think that helps me offer expertise to my clients. But at the same time, when I'm at those events and I'm looking at the people that are sitting on the panels, I feel very, I guess, insecure or thinking that why can't I be an expert like that? If that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. And you know what's interesting about that? One, I think that's a very common thing that people think they're afraid. They're afraid that they're not an expert, or they're not as smart as people think they are. Yeah. One, my guess is that some of those people in that panel have the exact same fears. And two, I was actually having a conversation with my friend last night about this, where he used to operate in the place of, I need to feed my smart ego. And so he'd show up to be the smartest guy in the room and always have to expound knowledge and all these things. And he said in the last couple of years, it was really an interesting, the analogy. He's like, we were sitting at a bar talking, and he like had his arm over, it was like he had like a child underneath his shoulder that he has arm on. He goes, he's like, this is this smart ego over here. And he goes, and I used to need to feed him all the time. And then I've kind of got to the point in my life where I've fed him, and I know he's here, right? But I don't need to constantly feed him. And he said, and I'm so much happier now, because it's actually kind of exhausting to have to show up as the expert all the time. And because in the space that he's in, he is definitely an expert. He is not a technologist at all. But so I think that's cool. And I think if I could give you some coaching around this quickly, I would say you've been working at the same company for 16 years, and clients come to you to make sure that they're working appropriately. I would be shocked if you're not an expert already. I don't believe that you'd have your job if you weren't already an expert.
Right.
And there's always more to learn, right? Technology changes, and
always, every day is changing.
Always. Yeah. So not everybody's going to know. You just have to figure out what is you're most interested in. So thanks for sharing that, Mary. I appreciate it. I'm sure that as a fellow technologist, that's not always easy to admit, like, I don't actually know all the answers, or maybe I do, or maybe you think I do, but maybe I don't. But I
Right.
think you've been pretty clear that throughout the time today that you're somebody who's always learning. And I think that's really all you can ask of people, is that they're always learning and staying updated. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're not an expert on something and your customer needs you to be, I'm sure you go out and learn how to be an expert on it. So I think it's all good.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, of course. So, Mary, what's your general philosophy on life?
Just help. Always be looking for ways to help people, whether it's in business. When I have to go into sales mode and sell things, I try not to think of it as selling services to people, but helping them find what they need to be successful in their business and to help drive their growth and their revenue. Um, I think it was Mr. Rogers actually who said there's quote that gets attributed to him about when things are bad, look for the helpers, that you'll always find people who are going out of their way to help. And I think everybody should try to be a helper and just do what you can, because in the end it's going to come back to you. I honestly believe that good deeds come back to you, and I've seen it over and over again with when I've needed help, that there's always someone. Like, for example, a few weeks ago, I had a minor disagreement with a sidewalk about gravity, and tripped on the sidewalk, fell, and literally within 15 seconds, I saw a woman's face in front of mine. She had a packet of tissues out of her purse already and was helping me. And so I think that does come back to you, and that's my general philosophy of life, is just always be
Yeah.
looking for ways to help people.
Yeah. I'm guessing I'm about to drop a dad joke on you. I'm guessing the sidewalk was pretty hard on you.
That's
Sorry.
awful.
It's so bad. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. And again, it's my show, so I could drop terrible jokes if I want. No, I'm kidding. Well, yeah, but I'm glad you're okay. I have a question for you about this.
Sure.
What and I agree with you. I mean, I help people for a living now. That's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Get paid for it, of course, but it's still helping people. Just like what you do, you get paid for, but you're helping businesses, and
Yep.
businesses are just a bunch of people. Where do you think the breakdown is for certain people that, like, they don't show up as wanting to help the world or help others? Like, where do you think the breakdown is for people around that?
I don't think it's malicious, and I don't think it's that people just don't like people and don't want to help them. I think, thinking to the times that I haven't helped, it's because I was scared to do the wrong thing. And I was afraid that if I did step in to help, that maybe I would be making a situation worse rather than better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is why I try, if somebody asks me for directions on the street and I honestly don't know, I just tell them I don't know, or I stop and get my phone out and look at Google Maps.
So would the alternative be that you would lie to them?
No, the alternative is, I've overheard, just like while walking down the sidewalk, somebody saying, I think it might be that way, or like, I think you might have to go there, but I'm not really sure. So, I try not to do half help.
Yeah,
and so
I was just to say that's so unhelpful.
Yeah, and I think that's just where it comes from, that some people just aren't comfortable maybe not being able to help, and that they would rather just sit back and let somebody else who they think might be able to help better help.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Well, I mean, and this kind of goes back to the first question of impressions of each other. Like, obviously we didn't, because in our first impressions, but I would say you are definitely a very helpful person, in our networking group, and just like, you strike me as somebody like, hey, when I need something, and I think Mary's a person who can help me with it, that you're going to generally say yes if we have some sort of relationship, which you and I have now. So that's super cool. I think there's, we need more Marys in the world, because even living in New York City, I don't know about you, but I'm married, I have a daughter. That's all amazing, and it still it gets really lonely here in New York sometimes. Yeah. And I think with more help and more people wanting to help others, that you could cure the loneliness. I think loneliness is actually one of the great, like, it's not a disease per se, but loneliness is a big problem for a lot of people. And there's actually been studies that the larger the community around you, the more
Mm-hmm.
lonely you feel if you don't feel connected to that community. So
Right.
there's a lot of people that are very lonely here in New York City.
Especially people, you work on your own. You don't go to an office and
That's right.
see other people and every day. I'm very grateful to be able to come to work to an office with other people in it where we can ask about our day, talk about things that are going on in our lives and things. But you see people in coffee shops who have sat there with headphones on because they're just doing work because they're solo entrepreneurs or they're working remotely. And I think those people can, and even on the weekends, I could go an entire day without talking to somebody if I'm just having like a chill out day.
Yeah. Yeah,
So yeah, I
absolutely.
think loneliness it can get lonely and isolated.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're getting near the end of the time now, and I had just a couple more questions for you. So I wanted to see if there's anything else that's come up through our discussion today that you're like, oh, I really wanted to mention that. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the audience at this point?
Visit New Hampshire. It's a really nice place.
It is. It is. For years, I would go up with my buddies to Lake Winnipesaukee, and we would hang out at a resort there. It was really fun. Me and three other guys. It was very beautiful up there. It's by what's the town? It's a big motorcycle town.
Laconia.
That's it, Laconia. So we'd go to Laconia. We'd stay at this resort. It was really fun. We would drink too much and play cards on the beach. It's really beautiful up there. We'd always go up for either Memorial Day or Labor Day or both. So I've also I've been to Concord for work. I'm trying to think where else in New Hampshire I've been. I've driven through it. It is a very nice state. And I've been there in the fall when it's just stunning. New England in the fall is unbelievable.
Well, when you gave me the prompt for the inside and outside my comfort zone, I thought you were asking me like what my favorite season was. So I actually had kind of brainstormed my thoughts about fall in New England and that's my favorite season. And
yeah,
I love fall, but I hate pumpkin spice. So don't pumpkin spice me anything.
I don't. So it's funny you say that. I don't drink coffee. Never had a cup in my life, which is super weird. Really? I drink green tea. So if you see me with Starbucks at a meeting, it's green tea. Okay, so one, I have no idea what pumpkin spice tastes like. Two, I hate pumpkin pie. So I also hate pumpkin spice as well. So you can be, I will give you my full 100% commitment. I will never show up with any sort of pumpkin spice thing for you.
Excellent. Okay, good.
I wouldn't even know how to order it. I would be like, what is this pumpkin spice thing? I don't even know. And where can the audience find you? One things I like to do here is, a lot of times we'll get requests, hey, Mary's super cool. Like, where can they find you? Like, where can people connect with you?
I love LinkedIn. That would be the best place to connect with me. Okay. You can just search for my name on LinkedIn. And if you give me a second, I will give you my URL. I think is just.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes as well. So
yeah, my name is just Mary Moss and my URL, so you can find me there.
Perfect. I want to give you a shout out as well. You had mentioned earlier about what you're proud of and taking the pictures of your friend's wedding.
Yeah.
You post a lot of really cool pictures on Facebook, and it's cool because it's like, and I think it's been more recent. Either I've been getting more of you in my feed, or I've just been noticing. But it seems like you're taking pictures kind of on the fly, which is really fun. Like you're just walking by, you're inspired by something, and you just shoot it with. I don't know if you're shooting with your phone or if you've got a camera with you, but your pictures are great. So I would
thank you. Yeah, I've been just taking pictures with my phone and posting them to Instagram, and it syncs over to my Facebook. And I just like seeing things. I'm always kind of scanning the city, and I see things that a lot of people just kind of walk by or don't see. And so the feedback I get is that people like to kind of see the things that jump out at me. So I've been doing that a lot lately. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on today, Mary. It was a pleasure to talk to you. And even though we do know each other in the real world, it's like I learned a ton about you. So it was really fun.
I learned a lot about you too.
Good.
And I'm
That's
glad
great.
we can take solace with each other in the fall from pumpkin spice thing.
Yes. It'd be like, I don't even know what this means, but I like it because it's like I get to ignore all of it, and I just don't care. So last tradition on the show is love if the guests would leave us with words of wisdom, and the words of wisdom should fit on like, something I could stick on my wall and a Post-it note, or maybe make a desktop screensaver or desktop wallpaper. Like, leave us with some words of wisdom.
Let's boil it down to this. Be kind to each other, be kind to yourself, and kick as much butt as you can every day.
I love it. Be kind to each other, be kind to yourself, and kick as much butt every day. Well, thank you so much, Mary, for being on today. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you,
to have you
Jason.
here. Yep. Take care.
Same here. You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with me, Jason Frizzell. Enjoyed today's episode? Please tell your friends, give us a shout out and a follow on Facebook and Instagram, and take a moment to leave us a review on iTunes. If something from this episode has piqued your interest and you'd like to connect about it, please email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners.